Chapter 21 of Life in a Thousand Worlds. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Lizzie Driver. Life on a Thousand Worlds by William Shuler Harris. Chapter 21 The Life on Wings. As I darted from world to world, I was not then fully conscious of the vast stretches of space that I had covered. No mortal nor angel tongue can ever commence to describe the vastness of created things, and the trackless oceans of space in which the ponderous suns and planets revolve. According to the classification of our astronomers, I next found myself in the constellation of Perseus, and was again convinced of the weakness of our most powerful telescopes, for I now saw thousands of immense stars, hitherto invisible to me. Not one of these stars is within 1,000,000,000,000 miles of any other. In this distant system of our universe, I saw that the same plan of creation obtained. Around a majority of the stars a group of various sized worlds revolved. On many of these worlds human life abounds in endless degrees of development, and in countless variety of manifestations. I marvelled anew as I saw the endlessness of the infinite mind, supporting not only the conscious life of this whole constellation, but also of all the constellations of our universe, and of all the universes scattered at large throughout the unending depths of space. I paused at a star of variable magnitude in the Milky Way, but took only a passing glance at the physical wonders of this great sun, compared with which our sun is a mere pygmy. Onward I hastened to one of the larger worlds of this solar system, which, for my convenience, I will call Swift. Here new wonders opened wide to my view. Human beings, charmingly beautiful, moved over the face of the planet, or on wings through the air at pleasure and with great ease. These creatures are about 3/4 of our size, and are most gracefully formed. Their whole physical appearance is more similar to a bird than to a human being of our earth. They are relatively much lighter than we, and are covered with nothing akin to feathers. If you were to see them standing in their erect posture, and walking with man-like dignity, you would at once feel that they are the lords of the creation on their world, and so indeed they are. These ethereal creatures have the loveliest eyes of any human beings I have ever beheld in any world. They sparkle with the brilliancy of a diamond, and move with the quickness of electricity. Their head is small but symmetrical, and all physical proportions are most harmoniously adapted, even to a nicety that would be pleasing to the most refined tastes of our world. At first I could not understand how these people of Swift could travel so conveniently in the air, for their wings are very small, and the exertion when flying is very limited. But the lightness of the body, the heaviness of the air, and the unusual strength of the Swiftites, each conduces its share to a fortunate result. In my thoughtlessness I envied these gifted people, and wished that when I would return to my world I could enjoy such privileges of flight. I soon checked this rising covetousness, and again contentment flung over me its white mantle. The bodies of these Swiftites are covered by nature with a clean growth of soft, silken hair. They change their garments with the seasons, but at all times dress very sparingly and neatly. They are so easily clothed that all their apparel occasions them no more trouble than the more seasonable covering of the head gives to our women. The average length of life is nearly 400 years of our time. There are very few worlds in space where the general health of its inhabitants is as perfect as is found on this beautiful planet. There are but few doctors, because there is but little demand for them. Those who are engaged are under government service, and all persons who are unfortunate enough to become ill receive at least all medicine and professional attention free. We are quite an exceptional world in our medical system. In all my journey I saw comparatively only a few worlds that have the private system of medical treatment. Have we not noted the labouring husband bending at his toil for 8 or 10 hours to pay the physician who calls for a few minutes? In some cases this programme is continued for weeks, until the honest toiler finds himself confronted with a doctor's bill and medicine bill to haunt him, until the debt is either forgiven or paid at great sacrifice. On the world of Swift, and in the vast majority of civilized worlds in space, the community or government furnishes a salaried physician within reasonable reach of every home. The doctors of Swift are not expected to work night and day. They have shifts to divide the toil equally. In architecture this distant planet excels us by far. I improved the opportunity and went to witness a magnificent temple of worship which has been in process of erection for over 200 years. Any conceit that I previously had on account of the large structures of my own world quickly vanished at the sight of this imposing edifice. During my visit the winged workers were labouring on the upper stories, and I watched them with great wonderment as they descended from the clouds to carry materials to the higher stories. Can you imagine the picture of workmen flying in all directions with tools, each one busily employed? It is promised that the present generation of employees will live to see the completion of this notable structure. This vast building is the national religious centre of the Swiftites. Each government has such a central station, and from it all temples of worship are controlled. Here the Church and the State are yet married, and the State maintains its religious departments with careful scrutiny. The chief ambition of each government has always been to outshine the others in the glory and magnificence of its central temple which, of course, is fire-proof and almost time-proof. One may wonder as he gazes upon this extensive structure, why there are 70,000 sleeping rooms and dining halls built after such extensive plans as to entertain, at one time, 25,000 guests. All this is to accommodate the vast throngs that take their sacred pilgrimage once a year, under an arrangement by which 1/10 of the able-bodied go each 39 days, which corresponds to our month. The most notable feature of this central temple is the main service room, built at fabulous cost, and capable of accommodating 100,000 pilgrims at one time. The most costly sections of this one room are guarded night and day by armed government soldiers. The religion of these Swiftites is of a very pure kind. The ministers of this national church are fully equipped before entering upon their office. The training schools for ministers attracted my closest attention. Fortunately these people have no language complications as we have, so that a prospective minister can spend some of his time studying the book of God's revelation, instead of spending a great portion of his training period in learning the languages in which the book had once been written. A minister's training consists as much in voice culture, and the many branches of elocution, as it does in acquiring a correct knowledge of God. But in illustrative teaching, Swift leads us by far. I was profitably entertained in the main temple, as I listened to one of the famous orators discoursing to an audience of 80,000. Not only did his canary-like voice penetrate to all parts of the large room, but his objective illustrations clinched the truth remarkably well. A series of special services is held at the close of each month. The most wonderful of all these exercises, or renditions, is called the Mediator Service. This is one of the most spectacular and impressive exercises outside of heaven. Even the famous Passion Play of Oberammergau, our world, with the less glorious exhibitions at Horitz and Selchaz, all dwindle into insignificance compared with the mediator service on the world of Swift. During my visit I witnessed the full programme of this sublime rendition. The music was inexpressibly grand, as rendered by the vested mediator choir. Naturally the Swiftites have sweet, bird-like voices. Can you conceive the effect of a triple choir of these human warblers, all trained in perfect harmony and unison? When you consider that nearly the whole population witnesses these special exhibitions at least once a year, you can better understand why the spiritual condition of the people has reached a very high level. I investigated the many interesting features of this inviting world, and found that in some respects we are inferior to these human bird creatures, although in many other respects we are superior. Electricity is known in their world, but they have not yet harnessed it. Hence they are ignorant of telegraphy, and a long list of similar inventions which we enjoy. In agriculture the Swiftites are ahead of us. They raise their crops with less labour relatively than we. All things considered, it is easier to live on Swift than here. Knowing that my time was limited, I decided to secure some nuggets of truth by a personal interview. So I concluded to appear to the wisest person on the planet, who was a woman of wonderful mental acquirements. In addition to her superior intellect, she was also bewitchingly beautiful. I waited for the best opportunity, and came near to her as she was about to spread her wings for a morning flight from the beautiful summit near her summer home. Not wishing to cause her undue alarm, I at first spoke softly, remaining invisible and watching her rare eyes send their glances towards the palmy trees around me, as her wings were relaxing quietly at her side. She was positive of having heard a voice, and as she still further scanned the immediate surroundings, I saw that perplexity was furrowing marks upon her face. "Hast thou time to spend with a friend from another world?" I calmly inquired, as I went still unseen by her. She was nervously agitated, but being of strong fibre, she quickly rallied with her answer. "Where art thou, and who art thou?" "I am on a peace mission from a far distant world," I quietly said, as I slowly became visible to my audience of one. Naturally she was alarmed at my appearance, and consequently I drew gradually farther and farther away, until she gained more self-possession and turned interestedly toward me. "Ah, how can you be a spirit without wings?" were her first unexpected words. "But I am no spirit," I said assuringly. "You cannot be otherwise," she insisted. "Believe what you wish, we have no time for parley. I am delighted to visit your world, and I desire, if possible, to have some mysteries solved. Can you help me?" Plume, for that is the name I called her, was much unsettled. She scanned my form with wild curiosity, and I feared that she would at once use her wings at their swiftest. "Pray do not fly hence," I quickly urged. "I will never harm you, even though we could converse together for ever. Believe me true, and rest your wings and heart in peace." My words had some effect toward calming her mind, and with more placid features she still looked at me half shrinkingly. "Are you not happy that you have wings with which to fly?" I continued, hoping to create a more natural familiarity. "Happy? No more than for my feet, my ears, or my life," she answered in a more composed manner. "You say that you are from another world. Where can that be?" was her welcome query. Then I pointed my finger in the direction of our world, and remarked, "If you could travel in that direction on swift wings day and night for a few millions of years, you would still be far, far away from the world where I live." And is that world inhabited by sensible creatures?
It is.
But how could you have traversed so great a distance?
Never can I explain that mystery to you. Be content that I am here.
Are you in the image of the other human creatures in that far-away world?
In general, they are all fashioned as I am.
No one having wings?
She added with surprise. Not one.
How can that be true?
Because we were made without them.
And have you no way of moving through the air at pleasure?
Not without artificial machinery.
Artificial machinery? She repeated. What can you mean by that?
Of course they have no word for balloon or flying machine, and I found it difficult to describe the shape and explain the philosophy of these things. I did the best I could in her language, and after I finished my description, she for the first time smiled and said, "That sort of construction would be a fine thing for the indolents of our world, who, through misuse or lack of use of their wings, have no more ability to fly." This was interesting to me, and I closely inquired as to the cause of this loss of the wing power. Plume grew more and more familiar in her address, and in a long conversation told me of the many conditions that make people unfit to fly. I deduced from our conversation a few of these causes. 1. Simple neglect. 2. Gluttonous life. 3. Sensuality of a low and heavy life. 4. Pride. Some yield to a superstitious notion that it is honourable to make but little display of themselves, and to allow their wings to be bound or partly clipped. 5. Certain kinds of sickness render the wing cords inoperative. I learned that altogether nearly 1/2 of the population are unable to fly. How my mind flew back to our own life as I was learning of these sad conditions. There is a sort of life on wings in our world, although the wings are invisible. But on account of the low, mean lives so many are living, they never rise above the miasmic contagion of the sin and self-level. These unseen wings are either paralysed or clipped. Plume now actually stepped toward me. What a graceful tread! She was indeed the most charming creature I had met outside of my own world. She seated herself near me on the rustic bend of a tree, unlike any in our world, and hurried her questions at me, as if she realized that I would not tarry long. At length she gratefully said, "I am beginning to believe that you really are a son of another world, or else I am revelling in a daydream." "Happy am I that I can learn from you some of the truths after which I am seeking," was my evasive reply. "Tell me, Plume, something about your faith religiously."
"I worship the God who made all things, and am hoping to live in the wider life after my mortal days are ended."
"Do you expect to meet, in that wider life, representatives from other worlds?"
"Ah, I have often thought that it might be so," she answered, as her face brightened into poetic fervour, and her eyes sparkled with seraphic lustre.
"It shall all be so, and much more," I declared. "In that life you can fly without wings, and mingle with the pure from the unnumbered worlds of space."
"What an incentive to a pure life!" she quickly added.
"Talking of wings, do you object if I see more closely the cut and style of your wings? I never before saw a human creature possessing a pair."
After a moment's hesitancy, she raised her right arm, and with it the one wing unfolded. I ventured near enough to see the intricate network of muscle and bone woven around the arm, and filling the space between the raised arm and the side of Plume's body. She was surprised at the interest I manifested in the human wing. After this she offered to furnish an able escort to conduct me to several points of interest. All this I declined, and informed my talented friend that I must hasten away to another world. "Let me go with you," she strongly insisted. "Your wings are not of the right kind," I replied hurriedly. "They are strong enough to bear us both," were her inviting words. "But not beyond the atmosphere of this world," I explained. I quietly arose, scanned once more the beautiful valley before me, and indicated that I was about to wane into the invisible. Then did her womanly nature assert its supremacy, and she, for the first time, touched my hand imploringly. Have I been dreaming, or do my eyes deceive me? How can all this be true? Your hand is sensible to my touch. I implore you to remain until I speak to you more about the sciences of your world. In all my journey I never yielded to persuasion before, but somehow I consented to spend a season longer of most charming fellowship, talking of the elements in nature, their chemical affinities, and the laws of matter and mind. Plume was unusually bright in the philosophies, and I gathered from her many truths which had always before been hidden from me. Finally I became rigid in my determination to leave, for I knew that I could not stay. "Grant me one request," she begged. "Let me hear it." "Promise me that you will return." "Impossible! Impossible!" The parting that followed was indeed memorable. Without any further notice I suddenly vanished, but still tarried invisibly in close proximity. Plume was now left in deep bewilderment, and I could not even conjecture the details of her warring thoughts. Finally I saw that for which I had tarried. Plume lifted her wings and flew skyward, as beautifully and graceful as any bird of our earthly air. Chapter 22